Hello, everybody. Nothing like a little light content for your Saturday. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. And we have former Bachelor contestant Madi Prewett, Trout, now that she's married to billionaire heir Grant Trout. She's speaking about Ephesians 5, a Bible quote about how women should submit to their husbands. And it has enraged an audience here in the good Lord's year of 2024. I'll tell you what, don't take my word for it. We're going to bring on Dr. Laura, who is an expert in passages like this. She's an expert in trauma that folks have received because of the church. Now, you can be religious, and you can also speak out against things that might be archaic, that might present an ideology that doesn't live up to the standards of equality that exist in today's world. Both things can be true. If you feel triggered at all by any of my content that might feel like it is anti-religion, I just ask you to dig a little deeper and submit to this video by hitting the like button. All right, we're going to get into it right now. And here's what Madi had to say. Her header is, "There's security in submission." Now, I'm going to go off and tell you right now, submission can be something that means multiple different things, right? It can be sort of metaphorical, like I submit to you in what we end up doing for dinner. Well, I want to go to Applebee's. Well, I submit that, Or it can also be submission in the sense of like you're under someone else's hierarchical control. Let's listen to what Madi thinks.
When I submitted to God's will and when I submitted to my husband, I actually found the security that I was craving. And it wasn't in my nagging, it wasn't in my controlling, it wasn't in my feminist approach that I got the security that I wanted. It was in the submission to God's order and God's design, and in the submission to my husband as the head of the home and as the leader of the home, that I got the security that I was craving. I think going against that, there is something in our nature as women. I mean, it goes back to the fall. It goes back to Genesis 3. There's something in our nature as women. We want to rebel against that. We want to control. We don't want to submit. We don't want to respect. And we have to fight against that because it is our call as a wife. If you chose to get married and you're choosing to build your life on the foundation of Jesus Christ, it is your call to submit to your husband and to respect him.
All right, so lots to unpack there. The comment section went off on Madi. And again, she's got a giant following, 1.8 million, right? Big following. But folks said, what do you mean by submit? Another one said, it's disappointing to hear this. Women are allowed to speak up for themselves and have a voice. This doesn't seem to be religious at all, just sexist. Maggie said, just to clarify, being a feminist is not synonymous with nagging or controlling your husband. No one should be nagging or controlling their spouse, regardless of gender. Yeah, the way Madi said feminist kind of made it seem like it while there may be feminists of different spectrums, the general agreed upon term, not to mansplain feminism to you, although I got my feminist hairband in, the feminist ideology is primarily one of equality. You don't always get equality in sort of a patriarchal structure. So while the idea of submitting to God might be, well, you know that there's a greater being and that, he'll have the answers. Okay. But submitting to your husband, now that is something that can be used in abusive situations against people. B. Brock said, this is a really frustrating message to women. Respect my husband, of course, just as he respects me. Submit to my husband? Like, what does that even mean? As a Christian woman, I do not support this message, and it's wrong. This is called being brainwashed. And someone said it's giving Stockholm syndrome, which, of course, is the syndrome of sort of speaking favorably about your captor. I feel like our country is under the spell of Stockholm syndrome, the way we talk about health insurance. I love my job. They give me great health insurance. It's like saying, I love my captor. They give me food and water. Anyhow, I digress from that point. But what I'm trying to say is Jesus would have been for socialized healthcare. That's just my thought. He was a socialist. So they say it's ignorant to bash feminism because feminism equals equality. The reason it's called feminism opposed to gender equality is because women are the ones who have historically been oppressed and faced institutional discrimination, not being able to open a credit card until the 70s without husband's approval. That's a good point. Financial security is something that comes to mind a lot when discussing the idea of submitting to others. Financial abuse is very common in a relationship. A lot of times, the man makes more money. The wife might have retired because she's having babies and needs to stay at home. There's so many different circumstances where the man has the control. Now, in this case, Maddie's actually, my guess, making more money than Grant. Now, he comes from a billionaire father, a billionaire with a capital B. That is, a person who is a billionaire has at least $1,000 million. Okay. I think he's got 5 to 8 billion. So he's got 5 to 8,000 million dollars. Okay. That's a lot of money. Billionaires are super rich. They don't get taxed enough. I think they should all pay at least 25% tax on their wealth, but that's a whole different conversation for another day. So this idea is interesting about submitting, and she'll respond, and she did, to some of this criticism, saying, no, I'm not saying, it's got to be one thing versus the other. But she uses these terms that, they're wildly problematic. Now, I've been accused, with this 1-star review, of actually veering squarely into manosphere territory with a predominantly female audience. So let me remind folks, this is a video where I speak about the need for equality, and by that I mean feminism. Folks like Maddie, like they always have, when they talk about being pro-life or pro-submitting to your husband or these things, maybe that opinion works for them, but by preaching it, it's breeding a society where it can be misused. I think all women in relationships should have some form of financial security, because a relationship a marriage shouldn't be a contract where one person is beholden to the other because they pay the bills and this and that. And I think her intentions are fantastic, but by using such archaic terminology, it doesn't live up to today's world. Those are my opinions. Here's my conversation with Dr. Laura. All right, in order to talk about this complex topic, we've got our good pal, friend of the program, Dr. Laura Anderson. Dr. Laura Anderson is a psychotherapist, trauma resolution coach, and consultant, writer, and educator specializing in complex and developmental trauma. Hey, doctor, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I feel like I'm the purity culture correspondent, like field consultant or something.
Yeah, you're like live from the war zone known as Madi Prewett's Instagram page.
Yeah, exactly. I come on whenever she makes a scuffle or something.
So as it works is, not to be too snarky here, but you see these things online and you gotta reset your eyes from rolling to the back of your head. As far as religious trauma goes, she posts a Instagram story that's part of a podcast, which is about, I believe, is it Ephesians 5? Do I have that right? About submitting to your man?
Okay, I'm going to be honest. It's hard for me to remember all the biblical passages, but I do believe that you are correct. Ephesians is where we go to for all the roles stuff, the gender roles inside marriage.
Yeah, so one of the Ephesians 5:22 says, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. And, words can have a lot of meaning. So some people say, well, no, it doesn't mean submit like that. But a lot of people in the comment section were...
It does.
Oh, it does? Yeah, well, explain to me what this means to you and what you were taught regarding this.
Yeah, I think that's the important part, is you have to look at it in the context that Maddie's talking about it, because, I know in the comment section, people are like, oh, you can interpret this in a lot of different ways, and that may be true, but the way that Maddie's talking about it, the way I learned about it in high control religion, and the way that it's usually interpreted really is in a hierarchical way. And it's the idea that marriage is between a cisgender heterosexual man and a cisgender heterosexual woman in a legal lifelong marriage. And in that, the man is the head of the household. He is the leader. He makes the decisions. And that's not to say that the wife can have no decision, no voice whatsoever, but it means that he's where the buck stops. And the wife is supposed to submit to that. And that often means that when a decision has to be made, she has to defer to him, even if she wants something different. And women are told from a very young age, like, because you're a woman, because of your kind of history of being a woman, and Eve all the way back to the beginning in the creation story, Eve is the one who brought sin into the world and wanted to usurp Adam's leadership. You are prone to wanting to do that too. And so that's why you need somebody over you to, in some cases, dominate.
Yeah, we actually see this play. We see this play out with abuse, where you have former faith leaders for former presidents, molesting a 12-year-old, and then they go, well, she was really tempting me. It's like these crazy things here. I tried to use this biblical reference. My wife, Tasha, we were watching Netflix, and I wanted to watch this one documentary, and she wanted to watch Bridgerton, and I said, honey, Ephesians 5, you need to submit to me having control of the clicker. Yes. And then she actually took the Bible and hit me with it. So
good job for Tasha, as she should have.
Yeah, so
there are marriages where literally a husband would say that and the wife would say, yeah, you're right, and would have to turn over control of the remote control and say, here you go, like you need to choose. I need to submit, and here you go. That's totally a thing.
And I guess the most or the least brainwashed version of like this Bible quote would be people saying, no, you need to respect each other, but that's just not what it's being used for. So while Madi might say like, no, I'm not purity culture, I'm not this, I'm not that, she's not, her actions are showing that like these are the types of words that lead to abuse. And in a lot of relationships, if there's children involved, the wife stays home, the man becomes the one in control of the finances. And then you have you have to submit to the man who pays the bills. Like you can't afford to not submit, and it can be dangerous.
Yeah, because in that system, yes, the man is the leader. There is a lot of responsibility on him to make sure that the finances are taken care of. He goes to work, she takes care of the home, which also includes the children, which oftentimes puts her in a place where she doesn't have the ability to leave if she wanted to. Maybe that means she doesn't have an education or skills, like career skills or anything like that. And so there's a huge power imbalance in that in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases. And so, we see that can be very, the disparity between the two is set up from the beginning. And even though, in the video, Madi says, gosh, I felt so much relief when I finally just gave into that. There's a lot of cases where that actually turns into a lot of abuse. And where one person ends up having to really fragment themselves and cut off parts of themselves in order to fit into a dynamic like that to make it work.
Yeah. And, a lot of the comments reflected that. And what I loved, you posted somewhere talking about having empathy, though, because, your book is called When Religion Hurts You, Healing from Religious Trauma. So when you talk about healing, you have to understand that you also admit that you kind of bought into this patriarchal system.
Yeah, when I said I had empathy is simply understanding from somebody else's perspective. I do have empathy from my own lived experience. There was a time in my life where I absolutely believed exactly how Madi was talking, where I thought, that is my, the pinnacle of my life is to be in a marital relationship where I am in a submissive role and my husband is the leader of the home. And I failed at that miserably. I just, because I'm not that type. I am somebody who has a stronger personality and I have some natural leadership skills. And I was taught that I had to submit to every man in my world. And I constantly got in trouble for not being submissive. And so I was excellent at failing. But I have empathy for her and going this is what I'm supposed to do, because that is what women in that culture, in that system are taught is the most godly way. This is how you are raised. I was trained as a little girl to do these things. And I would assume that Madi was as well, and many other women. I think Madi has a pretty package that she wraps around it, and she has a platform that makes it look cool. But there's many women where there is no other option. That's that is just what we've been taught since we were small children.
Now, when you hear of other high control cults like Scientology, you always go, how are people not getting through to them? Maddie's posting this, and there's clearly a lot of information and education in the comment section from, people that say, hey, I'm a Methodist pastor. Hey, I'm, this. And people, people feel the need to give their credentials. So it doesn't just sound like a bunch of people hating on religion. It's hating on the toxicity. So do you think that she's able to, digest any of that? And does the church teach you how to deal with those comments that call you out?
The church, in a lot of high control religions, including something like Scientology, they teach you that you are going to be persecuted, that people will not understand you, that people are going to question you. And so when you get comments like that, it's almost like it's bolstering, making you even more courageous, bolder, and going, because I'm expecting this. So that must mean that the thing that I'm doing, the thing that I'm saying is actually right, because I'm getting this pushback. People don't understand me, but it's because I'm doing what God wants me to do. It's pretty messed up, but it's something that we're taught from a very young age, that persecution, that struggle, that suffering is something that is an indicator that I'm doing something right. I'm speaking out for God. And so no, we're not taught how to deal with people like in a critical way, like critical thinking way, or to apply curiosity. We're just taught that when we get that pushback, that actually means we're probably doing something right, and that we actually need to dig our heels in a little bit further, so that we can, preach even harder. So, I think that there's been times where Maddie has had her own level of empathy or compassion for people that have said, hey, that's not been my experience, or there has been abuse. I've seen little moments where she's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. But I don't know that I've never spoken to her personally, but I don't know if she has the capacity to understand how a teaching like that, really carried out to its full extent, has regularly harmed people in a pretty extreme way.
Yeah, and you're right. And she also comes from a pretty wealthy family where she hasn't been under the financial control or been in these circumstances that are very common when you do apply these sort of very old school Handmaid's Tale. Which, by the way, Handmaid's Tale is so funny to me because Elizabeth Moss, the star of Handmaid's Tale, is in Scientology. So the whole thing's messed up. But so in the comments, Maddie says, no, you're taking it out of context. Listen to the podcast. Did you listen to the podcast? Is there a greater context I'm missing?
So I haven't listened to the episode yet. It's in my queue to listen to today. So I'm going to. I can imagine no circumstance where there is a greater context, because having come from that system and understanding the theology and how all of that is spun, I know the context. I can tell you the context. When she released her podcast, when she announced her podcast, I was like, oh man, Maddie's about to make a lot of money, because there's just this way of talking. There's this pastoral way. Do they teach you how to talk that way, or is that just human nature to reflect how your pastor sounds? Because they're so it's so melodic and sort of there's such a speech pattern to it. Yes. I don't know if they have a speaking for pastors course. I mean, they do. they have, obviously there's divinity school, and there's, theological school and things like that. So they do actually have classes that train you in these sorts of things. And there's different styles of speaking and things like that. I've been around enough pastors, and people that have come out who used to be pastors and are no longer. And they have all told me oh yeah, you're taught, this is how you do things with this cadence or this tone, or you bring it down here and up here, and you style it in this way. And you learn to have the worship team come in here and, play soft music. And there is 100% stylistic elements to it that are, I guess I would say hypnotic in quality, to make an environment so that people listen to it in a particular way that gets to their heart and their mind, so that they are more apt to listen and suggestible, which means that the message gets to them and hopefully kind of quote unquote penetrates their heart and their mind. That's such a Christianese word to say, but like, so that they are really impacted by it, and hopefully that it changes them.
Yeah, look, I've been there. The music, the guitar kicks in, the bass comes in. You're like, all right, I'm floating. I get it. And now look, it doesn't mean that like there is a recipe for like with stand-up comedy, there's a recipe for kind of getting the audience in a cadence that's laughing. It's a different energy than love, but it's similar in that there are ways to sort of replicate that. TEDx talks notoriously have a very similar way of speaking, and then they like you said, the sort of volumes and the give and the pull. It's all it's part of the charm, but it's like the charm's not the issue. It's what you're saying. It's what you're actually saying. That's the issue. And man, I really appreciate that you'd hop on and talk to us about it. Again, your book's When Religion Hurts You. Anything else you're promoting out there?
No, I think that's it. You can buy it wherever. You can follow me on Instagram for all religious trauma content if you want it, Dr. Laura E. Anderson. But yeah, I'm happy to jump on anytime with my field reporting. I love talking all things purity culture. So
I'm almost ready to have the home studio set up for 2 mics and 2 cameras. So next time we'll do Costco, we'll get the cold brew, and then we'll come right back here.
I love it. I love it. Let's do it.